What's up, everybody? My name's Nico, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about the new Wuthering Waves 2.4 update. Now, I'm coming at it from a bit of a different perspective. You know, you got your bit more of tryhards, in-depth detail stuff with like your Saint Tontas, people like that, but I'm approaching it from more of a casual perspective. You know, I work that soul-sucking 9 to 5 job and just want to come home at the end of the day and relax and play a game for a couple of hours if I can. So I want to look at the 2.4 update through kind of that lens. The first thing I want to touch on is the setting. Now, when you first see Septimont, you're flying on the wing ray and you break through the clouds and you just see the city there with the backdrop of the sunset. And it looks absolutely beautiful with the ray tracing and the graphical fidelity. Kuro really is just bringing their A game to it with their graphical design now. And as you're going through and you start to land, you have this amazing vocal track playing. Kuro is once again, just like with the graphical design, bringing their A game with their music choice. They've really been consistent with bringing, I think, very amazing vocal tracks and just background music in general now. And the city of Septimont in general, when you start to look at the city itself, the statuary, the clothing design, it's a very Greek or like Spartan, I would say more Spartan with their emphasis on gladiators aesthetic. It really looks fantastic. And it's, at least from what I understand it's also supposed to be inspired by the city of Atlantis. So you have kind of that Spartan aesthetic. There's a bit of modern in there with like these ad posters, and does a really great job of just setting the scene for what you want to see, right? And aside from just the setting, we also get introduced to quite a few new characters that are going to be coming up as pullable and playable. The first character we get introduced to is Lupa. Now, Lupa has, I think, a great design. She has the little twin tails. With the name Lupa, you know, she's a bit of a wolf. Yeah, she does have the tail. I'm not a fan of the tail, personally, but aside from that, she looks great. And you can really tell that Kuro is continuing to improve on their facial animations and facial designs. The way she smirks at you or kind of has that grin that makes it look like she just kind of wants to devour you a little bit is just great. I noticed it really a lot, like when Kuro started doing it with Chikona, when we got introduced to Chikona, just the amount of facial rigging and facial expressions that they're able to convey now in their scenes is just impressive, really. Like, just impressive how they continue to improve on that, and I look forward to what they do going forward. On that note about the facial rigging, though, I think it stands out quite a bit when you compare it to the Rover, because the Rover, by comparison, just kind of looks a little dull, a little bland. I think they really need to go back and do like a glow up on the Rover. My character is the female Rover, so I don't know if it might be different with male Rover. I imagine it's probably the same. But they just look kind of plain in comparison, and their face is shows less expression than some of these new characters. So I think it would do a great service to the story and characterization of the Rover herself if they could go back and just kind of do a glow up on their facial rigging. Aside from Lupa, we get introduced to first Augusta. And Augusta, she's fiery redhead, it looks like. The leader of Septimont currently oversees the gladiatorial games. And she also looks fantastic. The warrior kind of reminds me of Athena, maybe with the spear. And after Augusta, we see Iono, the priestess of Septimont. Which, as a side note, it's a little odd that they have a priestess when they're noted as being the ones who don't have faith in the Sentinel or anything. But aside from that, I think she's more of a divination type priestess. Anyway, her design also looks great. And that one was a big shock because initially when Iono was revealed, people seemed less enthusiastic about her, like, oh, she's skippable, things like that. But after seeing her design in the game, people are now a lot more excited for her, myself included. I think she looks great. The voice acting for all three of them is fantastic. Kuro's still doing a great job with their voice actors. I look forward to seeing what more we're going to get from them, because they sound fantastic. Next, let's just touch on the story a little bit without really getting into anything spoilery. The story seems to focus on Cartethyia and Rover's experience in Septimont, and you're seeing it from a dual perspective. Now, Cartethyia appears to be in a kind of alternate, either an alternate dimension in the same area or like a future timeline. And it's a bit odd because there's apparently happening side by side, and Rover is searching for Cartethyia, and you see traces of her, and then in Cartethyia's version you see where she left those traces. So it's strange, kind of. It's like she's in the future, but she's not, and it's an alternate timeline, and how that's going to come together. Personally, I'm not a fan of that type of story trope, but that could change with how they pull it off in the second half. This story is only half done. They decided to break it up, so they could make it a little more, what's the term I want to use, like palatable in the second half, explain it better. But the big thing with Kuro, and why I think their stories are so good, because it was still fantastic even with my little pet peeves about it, is even though some points of the story might be confusing or a bit difficult to understand, their presentation for the story, the way they tell the story, is S-class. They do a fantastic job. So it's that presentation that really knocks it out of the park. The story's concise. It's only about 3 hours long, so there's no bloat. There's not a lot of all that extra yapping that you usually get from a lot of these gacha games. So that really helps. And if they do that with the second half as well, keep it brief, concise, only around 3 hours or so, and they cut back on bloat like they do with this one, I think it's going to be another top tier story. Additionally, all the characters have just been very well written. Lupa, Cartethyia, what little we saw of Augusta and Iono, just the Rover's journey itself. Kuro has done a very good job of writing these characters and making you kind of care about the characters. More Lupa and Cartethyia in this case, because we haven't seen much of Augusta and Iono yet. But I'm looking forward to seeing more of those characters because of how great of a job Kuro has done so far. Kuro has also done a great job of like weaving in very cinematic scenes into the story. You get Cartethyia fighting the Guardian Echo of Septimont woven in there, and that's a great cutscene. You get later on you get a scene of them kind of fighting side by side, but in their alternate dimensions, and they weave in these cutscenes very well. You don't get a lot of that, I'm sorry to say, kind of like with Hoyo recently, with Star Rail and even ZZZ, where you get kind of that black text or black screen white text kind of presentation, or white screen black text. Kuro has done a very good job of showing you a lot of what's happening and not making you just have to read it, and that's been fantastic. Like I said, some of the story's still a little confusing. Like, I thought we stopped the Dark Tide back when we rescued Cartethyia in 2.2 and everything, but now it seems to be happening again. So is this a new Threnodian? Is it the same Threnodian that we supposedly put an end to? I don't know. It's weird. I don't really get it. The timeline seems odd to me, but they tell it in such a fantastic way. It makes it all worthwhile. Finally, I just want to touch a little bit on Cartethyia herself, because she was the new unit that was available for this first part of the patch, and she has been a lot of fun. I did get her myself. I've been looking forward to her because I love elves, in games, so she was a must get for me. I did have Chacona to put on team with her, but from what I hear, Chacona's not really necessary. Cartethyia still just does a fantastic job on her own. I have pulled more for her because I've attempted to get just as many of her duplicates as possible. I was able to pull one extra duplicate, you know, as much as Calcharo wanted to thwart me on that, you bastard. I was able to pull a second copy of Cartethyia, and then I had enough of the extra currency to get her to her S3. So I have 3 copies of her, and she's just a ton of fun. Even in her normal form, she does a great amount of damage. In her Fleur-de-Lis form, it feels like you're playing the boss you fought in 2.2. Which is great because, you know, a lot of times there's that meme going around where it's like the final boss when you fight them and they're all huge, buff, strong, powerful, and the final boss when you unlock them as a character and they're like this weak little thing. That doesn't seem to be the case with Fleur-de-Lis. She brings the power and it feels great to play as her. The rotation's not that complicated. When you try to read it in her character panel, it sounds really bad, but when you actually practice it, it's pretty simple. So she's been a ton of fun, very well-designed character, and I look forward to what Kuro's going to do next with Lupa. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull her because I have used literally everything I have on Cartethyia, but we'll see. 2.4, would I recommend it? Yes, I do. It respects your time. It's a well-told story. The characters are all fun and great to get to know. So if you're watching this, seeing this, and you're just kind of that casual person who doesn't know, I would recommend it and give Wuthering Waves a chance. They've really been stepping up their game, and I believe now you can almost immediately skip to the 2.0 quest lines, which is where it really starts to pick up. I think they just recently changed that. Could be wrong on that, though. But I would definitely give it a chance. So for those of you that managed to get through this and have also played it, let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and please like, subscribe, follow on here, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Kick. It's all under the same name, Nico21X. I'd love to hear from y'all and chat with y'all live as well when I stream. So thanks, guys, and until the next time, peace.